My name is Andy, and this is going to be a talk about native video playback in Unity. I originally actually wanted to call this talk, I will render video onto everything in Unity, but there's actually one or two things that it doesn't render onto, so I've gone for a little bit more of an accurate title. It's going to be about an hour long. I hate PowerPoint, so there's going to be some slides, and then the rest of it's all in the editor showing you actually cool stuff, and then it's going back to slides again. Is that OK? Has anyone just woken up now after they heard some English guy talking and saying words? Yeah. So my name's Andy. I'm an evangelist at Unity. My family thinks I joined a cult, which is kind of true. Unity is a little bit like a cult, both the users and the company itself. But really, my job is basically traveling around Europe, and sometimes other places on the planet, and teaching people how to make games, showing them new features, showing them cool things they could do with Unity, and then getting their feedback and getting their suggestions and looping them back into the team. So I show things to people, and they say, this is great, or this sucks, and then going and telling the team about that, and then kind of having that feedback loop around. And I like to talk about interesting and very strange topics sometimes, so I'm going to be talking about video for about an hour. So video in Unity is an interesting concept. We haven't really, admittedly, paid a lot of attention to it recently. I'll talk a bit about kind of the past of video and where it's at now and where we're going. I'm going to be talking a lot about video in Unity, how to get it in, how to manage it and play it back in Unity, and all the different things you can do with it, render it to an image effect, render it to particles, render it to an emission map, all kind of the wealth of things you can do with it. This isn't a talk about, for example, opening up Premiere and encoding it, or video editing, or how to film video, or effects in After Effects and stuff like that, partly because I'm paid by Unity to talk about Unity, but also I don't know that stuff. I'm just going to talk about the Unity end of things. So if anyone's coming expecting an encoding talk, our documentation has all the encoding stuff. I'm just here to show the flashy stuff. So no one left, so that's cool. So when I normally talk about video in Unity, I often find a lot of people think of this straight away. I want to have a video player that plays either a pre-rendered cutscene, or a tutorial, or some kind of window, or a Kickstarter video, or whatever it may be in this context, in a UI. And this is true. You can definitely do that in Unity with the new video player system. And I actually have an example to show you later on. But there's a lot of other things that you can do with video that aren't necessarily as obvious. So one of my favorite movies is Blade Runner, and this image has always stuck with me because of the big, massive screen of the woman's face on the side. Put your hand up if you've seen Blade Runner. OK, I said that at school once. No one put their hands up, and I was very upset and almost left. But this is a video playing on the side of a building within the world, within the context of the world. And there could be light shining off of it, affecting particles or smoke. And what I want to get by the end of this talk is to a point where people sort of think of video playing in a game or some kind of app, and it's this. You can also have it positioned in the world using the new video player and the old system, but the new one's better. And things like Minority Report. This is a super famous scene when he walks through the mall, and all the different screens that are curved. So you can see that one on the right's kind of curved, but sort of crystal-like. And it has an element of transparency, and you can see around the edge they use some kind of grab pass to kind of refract it a little bit. And they have all the screens have depth. And these are video placed in the world to either show different content or show different contexts. So this talk is going to go through all the different things you can do with the video and how to export it and present it to users, to your players. So yeah, I'm going to render video onto almost everything visual in Unity is basically the whole premise of the talk. So just to begin with, so I get like a bit of information. Put your hand up if you are a programmer, you write code, you copy-paste code, you Google, how do I make game, and then, OK, that's cool. Put your hand up if you're like an animator. OK, put your hand up if you're a 2D artist. Same guy. Put your hand up if you're like a video editor or a video like filmer. Same guy again. Put your hand up if you do, say, like UI apps, like not games. It's more like kind of the non-games market, I guess. OK, that's a good chunk. OK, interesting. Thank you. So in the past, and in current Unity, since Unity 2.0, so it's been a good decade or so, we've had a thing called movie texture asset. And this was created automatically when you import specific video files. You had very limited import settings. So you can see a screenshot on the right, which would display the movie, the size, and you can also see things like you could set the filter mode, loop, You have quality, although not exactly specifying quality of what. You had very limited sort of settings and options. It needed to be kept in the streaming assets folder, which could mess up kind of organization and various other things. And when you played the video in the scene, it would play the asset. So if you had that video placed in many locations, you wanted to play one of the videos, it would actually just play the asset and all instances play it, which is kind of a little annoying. It was quite limited in API. You couldn't do things, or it was very difficult to do things like scrubbing to specific points or to split audio channels or things like that. It wasn't actually supported on mobile. I think this is because it was integrated before Unity supported mobile, or there's probably some reason. I joined around Unity 4.0 days, so like I don't know the full story. And obviously, since then, mobile is obviously very, very big. And it renders the video as a texture that can be then applied to materials. So you could have it on walls, you could have it on chairs, you could have it on screens, whatever. And the audio is attached to the video asset. And we kind of took all this information and needed to make a native video player that fixed pretty much all the kind of qualms or issues that people had. People usually then went off and made their own video player, or they imported in, like they split the video into individual frames and then cycled through it, kind of like a sprite swap. Or they would like use something like AV Pro on the asset store and things like that, but those cost a lot of money. So we decided to build our own native video player, make it more of a first-class feature inside Unity. So the present and future from Unity 5.6 onwards is the video clip asset and the video player component. So the video clip is created when you import in a video file. It has video-specific import settings. So you can see on the screenshot on the right, you can do things, modifications in Unity, such as set the deinterlacing of the video to even or odd or off. You can flip it. You could import audio. And you can even transcode it to each platform. These are things you could do externally to Unity. But let's say, for example, you're not very comfortable with video or encoding, but you need to put a video in there. We offer you the options to transcode your video to platforms if you'd like to. You could always do this beforehand, so you understand how to encode a video properly or transcode a video properly for Android and iOS and set it up like that. But we give you this option here. It's a little bit like when you import a texture and you can like convert it to a bump map or something like that. It's like you can let Unity do it, or you could pre-do it beforehand. It's up to you. We needed this video player working on all platforms. So what we try to do with the video player is make it so that it runs on the device's native playback. So when it runs on iOS, it would adjust accordingly. When it runs on Android, it would adjust accordingly. And as far as I'm aware of, it runs on pretty much every platform we support. The playback scene logic has its own component. So whereas beforehand with movie texture, it was like combined in this one same bubble, we've split that logic apart. So you have your video clip asset, and you have your video player to control the playback, and they're separate entities. So a good way to think about it is having an audio clip for like a sound, and then you have an audio source to handle playback and all that stuff, and then you tell the clip to play through the video player. We basically took the same approach. Works on mobile, smiley face. You have more control over the audio playback, which I'll show you in a bit. And video can be rendered in many, many different ways. So we try to open up because Unity users tend to do all sorts of wild, amazing things with Unity. They do VJing, like some of the VJ stuff last night. The party was done in Unity. Actually, the big green swirl thing was generated in Unity as well. People do all sorts of pretty amazing stuff with Unity. And we wanted Video Player to be very adaptable and extendable for whatever you want to use it for. OK, let's just go to Unity. That's the one thing we care about, right? So I have a very simple scene with a advanced current technology television. I once showed this to a group of kids, and they were like, that TV, someone said that microwave looks awful, or that TV looks awful, and I now feel really old. So what we want to do with video is we want to be able to play it on, say, the background, the foreground, on a specific object, and control it in many different ways. So down here I have a couple of videos. Let's go with this wildlife video. So we have this wildlife video clip, which has already been imported. If I go to the import settings, you'll see that we can still import in a video as the original movie texture. That's partly to kind of legacy reasons. There's already tutorials on it. There's already lots of information on it. No doubt if we removed it, there will be about 4 people on the forums come, oh, why did you remove the thing? Like We can leave the legacy there just for kind of legacy purposes, but we, by default, will set it to the new video player system because it's better. We can also set the deinterlacing of the video if this isn't set up properly beforehand in previous software. We can flip the video, which is pretty cool. We can import the audio as well, and we can also transcode it to all the different platforms. So this current build of Unity, I haven't installed all the other platforms, but you can see that if I click the standalone drop-down, I could set the dimensions, I could set the codec, I could set the quality per platform. So let's say you're targeting Android, you could set it at a lower quality. It's very similar to like the texture import settings or audio settings for standard assets or typical assets. So we have this video clip. We can play it back. And we have a lion yawning. Nice music playing as well. So you can actually play back the music directly in the editor as well, which is pretty cool. We also have a little drop down, so you can actually see all the source info about the video. Its original size, imported size, duration, frames per second, pixels. We also support transparent video as well when you import it in, if you've set up the encoding correctly for transparency. And we also shows audio or not, if the video file comes with it. So we have this video clip sitting here. Now, there's a couple of ways we can get it to actually render into our scene. One way is just drag and drop. So we drag it into our scene, and it will create a video player component. And the best way to think of this video player component is actually on the slides, which I cannot switch to. It's like rendering images is obviously difficult, but Unity can play video on like a skybox. So yeah, I don't know. I'll submit a bug report to Microsoft. So what we have here with this video player is it's got inputs, it then handles it, and then it spits it out some other location. So we can input the video either as a video clip asset, or you can either input it from a URL. So let's say you have a video, let's say you're making a mobile game, but you don't want to include 1 gig video files, but it's an online-only game. You could include these video files on your server, website, wherever it may be, I think even Dropbox, and you could then link in that URL from there and be able to stream the video in. There's a couple of sites that block this. I think YouTube and Vimeo and a couple of other things block the video actually being pulled in, which is a shame, but that option is there. So you can see you can add in the URL. We have the reference to the video clip. We have things like play on awake. Wait for first frame will basically kind of pre-warm the first frame, so it doesn't take a couple of frames or seconds and then plays the video after a short amount of time. We could set it to loop and also set the playback speed. But most of the interesting bit here is this render mode. So the render mode is basically going to specify how you want your video to be presented. In this case, when I go into play mode, we now have a tiger rendered behind the video screen with nice audio playing as well. So you can see here that we can render it to a camera's far plane behind everything that the camera is going to render. And you can specify camera. Let's say you have multiplayer games with multiple cameras. You can also render it to the camera's near plane as well, in front of everything in your game. And you can also set the alpha value as well. So you could do a screen fade, a transition. You could do a screen fade, a transition, or something. This is quite anthemic music, actually. As you can see there's a monkey. Yeah, so you could basically manipulate the video to play full screen automatically without putting an object. Now it kind of looks like a music video, like a very cheesy 80s music video with all the fades. Another thing you can do is you can set the aspect ratio of how that video fits the screen. So let's say you are running it to 16:9, but your video is actually something completely different in scaling. You can do things such as no scaling, stretch it, fit it inside, fit it outside. So if we do fit vertically, actually this is probably a perfect video for this. Okay, I picked the best video to actually fit this, but you can change the different aspect ratios. Yeah, there's a hippo. You can also output the audio either not at all, directly, which is just going to play it in 2D audio, or you can actually output it to an audio source, and if you use Unity's audio mixing system, you can distort the audio and play it through that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this video and set it to something else. So let's alpha this out. So what you can see here is that we have a TV screen, and we have a quad on the TV screen, which just looks like this. What I can do is I can go to the render mode, and you can either output the video to a render texture, if you're going to use it for an image effect, or UI, or anything to do with a render texture. There's lots of different things. Or you can override a materials shader texture property slot. So you can actually input it into a shader. Let's say you have a hologram shader. You can actually stick the video rendering as a hologram, which I actually have later on. So let's do material override. The video's finished playing, I think. Actually, let's just leave it and then go back into it and do it. Let's material override. It's going to ask for a renderer. So this could be a mesh renderer, skin mesh renderer, a particle renderer. I don't think sprite renderer works because sprite renderer will need a sprite being input in instead of some kind of texture. And we can then specify the screen to be the renderer. And because the screen is using the standard shader, we have all the slots for the standard shader. And if you write your own custom shader, you're going to have all the slots to output the texture to those specific points. And I'll have a demo of this later on showing how you could use this. So now we're going to play mode. We then have the video playing on this TV. We can take the TV and, we can have this TV playing. And this video is now specifically playing on this quad. And I think now maybe I think we've set it like the occlusion map of the TV. You can basically, it actually looks a bit more realistic now in terms of this retroness of the TV. But you can then specify a renderer and spit it out to one of those slots. And you can toggle all this at runtime. So you could switch between, different views. You could say render on the TV, render behind, render in front. So you can actually toggle and change this all at runtime if you desire. So we try to make it as flexible as possible. So you could have a little TV, click a button, it goes into full screen, and then back again. So some people say, OK, that's cool. It's running on a flat quad. I want to now curve it around something or render it around the mesh. Well, that's totally possible. I hadn't planned to show this bit, but let's try rendering it to the TV's base. OK, so we now have the video wrapped around the UV for the kind of a reverse TV. But you can see you can actually output it to a mesh and then wrap it around that mesh and do lots of interesting things such as that. The TV also outputs to an audio mixer. So if we output the audio to an audio source and then set that audio source, we have the Unity's audio mixer down here. And as we play it, actually, let's set the screen up to be here. You'll notice that we actually have the video's audio going into the audio mixer, so we can actually manipulate the effects of the audio and change it. So I can go and make the That sounds horrible. Sorry, audio person. But yeah, you can hook it into the audio mixer and control the effects that are played through the video player. OK, by the way, this is demo 1 of about 20, so hopefully I have enough time to get through all of it. So over in this scene here, we have a couple of holograms that I've just downloaded off the asset store. And each of these holograms have different meshes that the video is then rendering onto. So one thing a lot of people ask me and says, oh, hey, you have your video player that's outputting a video. Can you have multiple video players outputting different videos? The Minority Report's example, there's 5 or 6 different videos playing on different objects. And it operates the same as an audio source, where you have an audio source for an object, for a jukebox, for a grenade, for a pistol, for a character. You could have video players for each of these individual things. So if I click play, each of these is then going to render. OK, let me mute it, because they're all going to play the same audio at the same time. So you can see here we have this very tall UV panel, which is using a hologram kind of like see-through shader. And we have some kind of looping video for some kind of graphic. And that's obviously, taking in the transparency of the shader, which looks pretty cool. We have this very strange kind of metaball blob thing. That's actually a normal map video, which is set up beforehand. But you can see it's actually taking in the shader and then kind of manipulating how the background is rendered. Here we have that same video on like a big round kind of circular column. So you can imagine like a sci-fi game, you walk through and have these kind of round futuristic adverts playing. And there's the tiger. Oh, no, it's now a cobra. But yeah, you can kind of see that you can wrap it around objects. And here's Shia LaBeouf, my motivational hero, who's wrapped around a curved screen using a shader which would then multiply over the background. And you can see here that we can like view it from other sides in the background. So the video is then playing wrapped around the mesh, and the shader is then determining that it's transparent or it's presented in a different way. So you can take video and you can play it on a flat quads, you can play it on a plane, you could put it on a, actually, I haven't got it running on a skinned mesh renderer, but I could probably do that later on if I have enough time. So you can play it on lots of different instances. Cool? Yes? No? Some people are like, yeah, it's all right, we don't really care about Shia LaBeouf. No, he's a hero. I always joke that we should have, like, if someone's, like, having trouble, they start swearing, and they're like, oh, I must finish my project. Shia LaBeouf pops up, and he's like, just do it. You can do it. I'm aware people here have no idea what this meme is, so I probably just sound like a weirdo. That's totally fine. So let's go to the next demo, pixel sampling. So one of the common things that people come up to me and ask about is, OK, that's pretty cool. You have the video playing on an object. Now, what if I want to tie this to some form of lighting? So for example, a video is playing, and it's not playing on an emission map, because the emission map is only going to kind of pulsate itself. But we have the video playing, and then let's say you have some sort of lighting adapting or something happening at a certain point around it. So here we have the Unite Europe 2018 auditorium. Actually, yeah. 2017 even. And we have a big screen just playing the video. And when I go into play mode, it's going to play the Unite Europe showcase video. And as you can see that as it cuts between different tones and colors of the video, even like the flashes, then the screen is basically going to adapt and change the lighting in the environment. This is a super common thing that people want to do when they see 360 video, 3D video placed in the environment. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to brighten the light a little bit so you can actually see what's going on. OK, that's pretty hardcore, but like, so you can see that the actual color tones are changing with that point light. So this talk's going to include a couple of gotchas. So the first thing that people assume is kind of the, maybe not necessarily the recommended way, but assume is the right way to do something like this is to get the video, go to the API, and you can access the current frame data, so get the current video's output, reference every single pixel, and get an average value of all the pixels. Now, if this video is something quite expensive, something like, what size is this video? I should probably know this. 1920 by 1080, that means you're cycling through, multiply those two together. You're cycling through that many float 4 values, every single frame, averaging it and working out that. And that's very, very, very expensive and very bad to do. Instead, you're only getting the approximate abstract value. So one trick that you can do, not specifically video player related, but it's a pretty cool trick anyway, is to make a sub-camera. I've got to turn that lighting down because it's like messing with this. Is to to create a sub camera. So we have a little camera in front of the screen. Wait, where is it? Here. So we have a camera in front of the screen rendering the screen orthographically. So it's basically just going to render the screen on its own specific layer. Now this camera is then going to output it to a render texture. And this render texture is the same scaling as the video, but it's only 19 pixels by 10 pixels. So you're basically downsampling the video from a render texture. And the reason why I'm using a camera is because you might have, for example, like curved objects and things like that. And you may want to only look at one specific section or one specific side. But we're basically then sampling this tiny little texture down here and getting the approximate value, and then basically applying that to the light. So we have the video in the scene, render it onto another camera, and then basically, rather than having, I think it's about 20 meg, and it's a very, very slow process, we have a 1.5 kilobyte texture that we're actually sampling and going through and changing that, getting the average color. And it has, why didn't you not play? And it has exactly the same effect as if you were sampling everything, every single pixel. but it's significantly cheaper as well. And I can send you that script afterwards if you want it, but you could probably Google it, and it's like the first link. Yeah. So let's go to the next one, UI. So Unity UI specifically doesn't really have a renderer you can plug the video directly into. Instead, they have their own canvas settings, image settings, and their own way of batching and rendering video. The one rendering UI elements. The one thing you can do is you can render a render texture into the UI. So what we have here is I built a very simple kind of UI classic video player setup. And if I go down to this video panel, I have a video input in, and I'm outputting it to a render texture. So it's not directly going to a material that's somewhere in the scene. It's instead going to a render texture, which I can then use in any sort of instance, such as an image effect, or in this case, rendering into the UI. I've set it to fit inside, and then I've set the render texture to be basically the same size as the video that's currently playing. And what I've also written, and again, I'll share this whole script, is a sort of a generic UI video manager, which will do things like it starts playing, it's in UI raw image mode, you can scrub through and go to different points. And it's kind of to demonstrate all the different API bits and pieces that you can have with the video. So if I play this, we then have the video playing. We then have a timeline sort of like slider going through. You can get the current frame data, so the current frame in time from the video. You can also get like total length. You can also do things, very complex things like pause and play. If we didn't include that, everyone would get angry. And you could also do things like manipulate the speed. Yeah, you can mess around with it. Also, you can directly reference the audio and do mutes and things like that. And you can also scrub through the video and set the frame and drag it back here. And you can also do things like when it gets to the end of the video, loop it back around to the beginning. So I think, I can't actually remember. Please do it. Yeah, there we go. So you can do things like when it's got to the end, has the loop point reached, and then reset it all back to the beginning. The other cool thing you can do is you can toggle between the different different video render modes. So if I click the maximize on button, you can see that I can then pop it out and have the UI sort of as a separate component and render it in behind everything. So you can actually adapt and change your video and how it's presented in the scene. And you can see here that as I click it, this element here will basically be changing between the two render modes live at runtime as well, which is pretty cool. And because Unity's UI system is can be 3D as well, you can also do really, really funky stuff like grab the video, move it back. You can, yeah, you can mess around with it and play around with it different ways. You could get the control panel here, and I've shown this to people who are UI designers, and they're like, "What? It's all 3D. You can do 3D stuff in Unity. This is so cool." And it's like, yeah, that's kind of the point, I guess. So you can then do things like scale it, and then I don't know, do some weird, super weird 3D transform. Yeah. Anyway, you get the point. You can basically render it as a render texture to a raw image in the UI, and then play around with it and put it on different things. So, yeah, and scrub through it. Now, there's one technique that is generally recommended when you do the scrubbing part of the UI, and those people who've done UI scrubbers before have probably already, come across this, but I thought I'd point it out anyway because it's being recorded and people may not have done this before. But typically what people would do is you have the video player playing over time, and it's setting the frame. Now, what you want to do is when you scrub through the footage, you want to pause it, then set the frame, and then when you let go, then resume it. You don't want to keep it playing while scrubbing because you're going to be jumping it to the frame and it's going to be jumping back. So you kind of get this jumpy, very back and forth. So what we have with this slider is, if I find it, this one here. I use the event trigger. So on pointer down of the event, I pause the video, just saying video.pause. As it's dragged, I set the new frame for the video, so you can scrub through it. And then let go, it checks if it's supposed to be playing or supposed to be paused, and then would resume from there. So that way, you get nice, smooth scrubbing without it constantly having to jump back and forth, which is the default way. So yeah, you can see it's actually pretty smooth as well. So let's go to the next one. So we have here a cube map in the scene, and we have a platform which is somewhere. So we have this plane here. Now what we may want to do is we may want to render the video to different texture slots. So the standard shader has built in all these different slots, such as albedo, specular, normal map, height map, occlusion, emission, all these different things. And because they're all texture slots, and because the video player can output to these slots or to a render texture, you can actually plug in a video as, say, the emission map, or plug in a video as a height map and things like that. Now, I have to disclaimer, I'm basically showing you that you can do these things. It's up to you whether you should do these things. Having a 4 gig video for a tiny little lava pulse emission is probably pretty bad if you're targeting low end. Maybe one-line code of a shader would be better, but that's kind of up to you to decide. I'm just showing it's possible, and these are tricks to be able to do stuff like this. So if I go to the video player, instead of outputting it directly to different material overrides, I'm instead going to use the video output just as a texture and just drop it into slots and show you it updating live. So let's go into play mode and do that. Yeah, pretty boring so far. They realize the light map baking talk is on right now. Yeah. So what we can do is, whilst we're playing, we can take the video and say drop it into the slot. So we've got a video of just this swirling here. And I purposely picked this video because it has black pixels, white pixels, and the gradient in between to show height maps and emission and things like that. And you can see here that we have the render texture there in the corner updating. And the render texture we could set to different settings to make it more optimal, or make it faster, slower, and change the quality. But I'm going to leave it to 512 by 512 just for the time being. So if we go back to our plane, we currently have it running through the albedo slot. Instead, what I'm going to do is undo that and place this running through the specular slot. And you'll notice that we can then adjust the smoothness and use this video as kind of like a specular highlight on the scene for reflectivity and also for the specular workflow, as you can see here. So let's remove that. Let's put it as a normal map. This won't necessarily work, partly because our video is not actually a normal map setting, but you can see here that it's already having an effect. You can already plug it into different slots and get different outcomes out of it, and obviously adjust the normal map accordingly as well. But we're not getting the best results, partly because it's not a normal map video. Height map is pretty cool, actually. So you can see here that we can then adjust the height map, and you can see we have a very slight offset of the video. And you can also slot it into multiple slots. So let's say the height map and the occlusion map. And let's slot it into, let's say, the specular one as well. We then have a really cool height map, and you can see there's at least a little bit of depth with the video. So you can see that you can reuse this texture that the video player is outputting into lots of different situations. Let's remove some of these. We have emission as well. So you can see here that we then emit the video out through the emission slot. And if I do something like turn off the lighting, you can see that we then have the emission actually taking over and then lighting the object. And you can basically go through and play with this and slot it into all sorts of different things, both in standard shader and also custom shaders. And one really ridiculous thing which I'm going to do now is render it to particles. Now, this isn't, I can't think of any instance where this looks really cool. So if you do, send me a GIF on Twitter or something like that of it, because I'm very curious to see how people use these things. But we have the default Unity upside-down snow spray particle system, which is I can't think of a single game which kind of has this as a thing, but whatever. This is using a texture slot here. So what I could do is I could go to the video player, which is running the Adam demo, so that one of the robot waking up and walking out. That's going out to a render texture, which is here. And let's slot that into the particles and actually see what happens when we hit play. We then have the Adam demo on the particles, and because they're using the I showed this to the team that made this, and they were like, "Why did you do this?" It's like pretty Inception-y, like, yeah. And you even have the audio playing like in the background as well. And of course, you have the wealth of all the different particles, like additive, and then you get some pretty funky effects, I'll be honest. Okay, multiply is probably not going to be a good option, but let's do like multiply. I'm fairly sure someone here could probably think of a use for rendering video onto individual particles. I haven't tried rendering a separate, completely different video per particle. That just sounds wild, but I like it. So if anyone does that, please, send me it in a video or a GIF. I'd like to see that. But you can see here that you have flexibility to use things in different ways, no matter if it works or not, in a stylistic sense. I have a bit of time left. So the next thing to show you is something a bit more sort of like target specific. So with the video, you can also do, in video in general, you can also do chroma keying, which is basically green screen. So you have video footage, which is recorded in front of a green screen, or sometimes it's a light blue screen, whatever it may be. And then you want to remove a specific color or kind of cut out the main content. Now, you could either do this before you import into Unity, like After Effects and Premiere Pro all have keying functionality. Or in Unity, you can get the data from the video player and actually sample the pixels and actually do all the chroma keying directly in Unity. One example could be like the URL, you're like streaming in video that has a green outline, and then you basically want to cut out the green outline because it's not pre-rendered. But I'll show you a project for this. And there's a guy called Kajiro. Has everyone found his GitHub or before or seen him on Twitter? Yeah. It's like Aladdin's cave finding his GitHub because there's a 371 repositories and every single one is incredible. And he's an amazing guy. So he works in Unity Technologies in Japan, and he worked on the post-processing image stack. And he's in our field engineer team, and he's an awesome guy who makes all these amazing projects. So he does VJing, and he basically took the video player and tried to use it for different things, both for VJing, but also not for VJing. So he made this chroma key example. I'll put up his link to his GitHub, but you could probably search Kajiro or Shader Wizard, and he'll probably be the first link anyway. So what he did is he set up a project which you can download, and it's completely free. You can download it, hack it apart, see how it works, where he has a video player outputting Shia LaBeouf, just do it, motivational video. And he shows different ways that you can, he wrote a script called prop amp, which basically takes the video and does keying for you. And you can set the keying color, you can set the tolerance, the spill removal, the trimming. So in this snapshot here, we have 5 Shia LaBeoufs.
Do it!
Yeah. If you haven't seen this before, Shia LaBeouf is an actor who filmed this and put it on YouTube, and there's parodies, they cut out the green screen, it's really cool.
So just do it! Make dreams come true! Just do it!
Yeah. I hope I hope he's actually a Unity developer and he watches this, and then yeah, it's kind of come full circle. So anyway, this is the same video, output through the same video player, but it's being re-rendered in kind of 5 different ways. The top left one is what the actual video looks like. The top right one is with the color keying put in and values changed so you can tint it and modify and tweak the actual video. One of them is a quad, one of them is an image effect, and the bottom right one is a render texture, which I purposely set low. So he set it pretty low. I purposely set low to show, look, the video is coming into Unity, is being analyzed and sampled, and then it's also then be able to tweak in the render texture to have this kind of, you could have Shia LaBeouf as a pixel art character in your game if you want to. So if we go to, oh, you can see the image effect one is actually like, you could have Shia LaBeouf in your game, in your scene, just giving you motivation as well. That'd be pretty cool. So if I select one of these, let's go with that one. We can see here that with this script that is provided, it goes to the source of the video player. So we're going to that point where all the logic and all the rendering stuff is controlled. And it's then setting up things like brightness, contrast. So we're taking the video player and we're sampling it and doing something with the data that it presents to us. So you can obviously set the brightness. So if you want an Apple advert of Shia LaBeouf, like the cutout of the character, we could set the contrast. So he's now a old Shia LaBeouf, I guess. Let me actually close these down. OK. We could also tweak the contrast, tweak the saturation as well, the temperature. We could also set a different keying color. So if you set the keying color to like white, you can see like is kind of the negative. So the blue Unity default background is like shining through, and it's kind of flipped. So you can see that with the video player, you get that data, and it's really up to you on how you analyze it and sample it and use it in different ways. And of course, you could do things like trimming, spill removal. You can also like set the opacity. You could do all sorts of really cool things. Yeah. So that I'll show a link at the end with the link to that project, so you can take that and see how, if you're doing keying in your project for whatever reason, so you want a hologram of a character popping up, and you already have green screen footage not pre-set up for transparency, you could do that and include that in your game as a piece of that. The other thing is video effects. Again, another Kajiro classic. So this is taking the video and then applying some kind of image effect to the video data. So you see in the top left-hand corner, we've got this, we've got David Helgeson dancing. It's not actually David Helgeson. And you can see that it's sampling the video, and then it's playing it in different ways using different image effects, using the source of the video player. So if we go to here, you'll notice it's not actually rendered anywhere in the scene. It's rendered directly into the camera. So you can see here that we have this rendering directly into the preview camera, and then that preview camera is then outputting it and not clearing it, and then the main camera has a couple of image effects, which are then doing something like take the source video and apply this, take this and do this. So if you write image effects or you have image effects, you could input in the video player and sample that and do interesting things. So I'm going to turn these off, or actually turning off this one's pretty cool. So you can see here that you can play around with the video data and present it in different ways and do lots of different things. So you could set this to like red, the angle, I guess. It repeats or not? Yeah, like. Yeah, everyone's going to go back and go to Kajiro's repo now because he's done all sorts of really, really cool stuff. Wow, OK. What if you did that? I'm not going to try it live because it'll probably break, but did that and then color key that and then loop that through? Yeah, that'd be pretty weird, I think. But you can see here you could do lots of interesting stuff. This is why I'm excited about VJing and people having some form of video footage and doing lots of interesting, wild things with it. Especially combine it with particles, and yeah, it's pretty cool. So another example is this one here. So with this one, it takes the video player data, and then it voxelizes it and places cubes and places different things. So this is actually a 3D thing like this. And in this current example, the video, as you can see in the top left-hand corner here, rendered to a little quad, because the video is basically being output to both the quad and also being sampled here, is it's getting the pixel color. OK, I kind of want it to move. OK, so it's getting the pixel color, and then it's specifying the size of the cube on that. So you see that the white areas of the character, or the video, like for example, the hat and the jacket are going to be sort of the slightly larger cubes. So you can do all sorts of things. You can get the data, and as long as you have that data, you can apply it in different ways. And these are all like cute. Let's. You can set all sorts of. Whoa, geez. The noise frequency, voxel size. Yeah, you can. It's pretty awesome stuff. There's one that actually, yeah, you can play around with it and do all sorts of really, really amazing things using this video data. So this is also on his GitHub, and again, I'll show the links at the end, so you can take it, download it, and sample it. Oh, one really cool thing which I'll show is with this one is if you switch the video, you can get sort of different results. So this video is really good for this kind of voxelization. Now, if I took Shia LaBeouf and put it in, one thing to notice is that if you're in play mode and you place this in, you'd have to write a script to then like pause and play the new video, or you can like disable it and then play it. And now we have Shia LaBeouf walking around, and because it's summoning the pixel color, you notice it's actually the outline of him. It's the other way around. So you can see putting in video, you can actually write some interesting image effects and interesting bits and pieces that sample the video and use it in different ways. Not specifically game-related, but I think it's quite interesting in general for lots of other sort of non-games and visualizations. 360. It's probably the thing that everyone's come for, right? Because 360 video is the big buzzword. So there's a couple of ways that you can render video in 360 video. And some people split video and 360 video as kind of two separate components, and they're actually combined. So you can actually use the video player to output a texture, which then wraps and is used as a 360 video. And you can do this in a couple of ways. One way is to render it onto a sphere, and one way is to render it as a skybox. So I'm going to basically show you both ways. So what I have here is I have a sphere, which just has this little check mark wrap around it. Now, if I output this video player to the sphere, so let's say, for example, I material override the sphere, you'll notice that we then have this video of a beach, which has been imported like this. So we have this beach video where the waves are like coming in and going out. And this is then wrapped around on the sphere. Now, ideally, this is not good for 360 video because we can't actually see what's happening. So what we've done is we've created a couple of shaders that I'm on camera, so I'm going to set now. I think we're going to eventually bake into Unity as drop-downs, but these are also available like separately to download and use, which then sort of handle the 360 video and sort it out to render it in different ways. So one is rendering it onto a sphere. So if I take this sphere and switch it from the standard shader to this 360 equirectangular shader, you'll notice that instead it's now rendering all the normals of the sphere inwards, and it also wraps it around the sphere. And if I just disable this and go into play mode, I have a simple script, so I can look around inside this sphere. So the sphere is basically inverted internally. This is cool. Now, the checkerboard is a little dull. So instead, what I could do is, because we're outputting this sphere to this material, and because the material has this shader, and because the shader is asking for a texture, we can use the material override and click play, and hey presto, we're on a beach with waves. Everyone's now going to go and film everything, film their cat, and put it in 360 video in Unity and stuff like that. So we have the 360 video playing in there. We also get the audio as well. I hope that's the actual audio of the beach, not like fans or something wrongs. Yeah, OK, that is the video. So we're playing the 360 video on this sphere. Now, there's benefits to this and there's cons to this. One is that you kind of have to do that setup of getting the shader, placing it, all these bits and pieces. And also, you're rendering like another big object, and your sphere has to kind of have enough complexity that it renders as a good wrap rather than a simple wrap. The other really cool thing that I actually like about this is you can then take these spheres and move them around. So if anyone's used, has anyone here played like Valve's Labs demos for the Vive? Where I think most of them were made with Unity, is they have these orbs with like the little worlds. And you can kind of pick them up and put them into your head to go into them. As you can see here, we have this orb. Hang on, I grabbed the wrong thing. There's like an actual object. So you can see here that we then have this 360 video sphere as an actual object you can place in the world. We can animate it. We could put it on the head of a character, whatever you want. So the 360 video is then an object you can move. And it could be cool to have these orbs that you then pick up and go into the 360 video bubble. Now, the other way to do this, which is probably a bit easier, but I actually think is a bit longer, is to instead render it to a skybox. So if I disable the sphere, and if we have a look in the scene, we have Unity's default procedural skybox, which will color from blue down to gray and kind of have a little white line in the middle. Now, you can override the skybox with different textures and different things. So if I find a skybox, for example, we have a static image of a kind of city scene, which is then going to wrap around the whole world. And it's not actually rendering an object. It's actually stored in Unity's lighting settings for the environment. Now, if I go to this skybox, you'll notice that here we have a cube map, which is then being used for this still image. What we can do is we can override that cube map. So if I find the relevant material, which is this one here, we have a, OK, that's a little weird. OK, that's the right one. So we also developed this shader, which allows you to input in a texture, such as a video player or something, set the tint, exposure, and rotation, and you can even specify the mapping of your video. So if you have 6-frame layout, which is kind of the unfolded box, you could render that, latitude, longitude. You could have image type of 180 degrees, because even though it's 360 video, some people render things kind of in a wrap in front of you. And with the video player, we can no longer output it to the sphere, because the material for the skybox doesn't sit in the scene. It sits in the lighting settings. So instead, we have to output it to a render texture. OK. Sorry, it's very, very early for me. And then we hit play. We then have the, so no matter where I zoom, we then have the skybox basically as our video, 360 video. Not playing. Why is it not playing? OK, we have a nice cube map, but no video. OK, imagine, OK, if we look over here, right, so we have a video. This is weird. I was doing this at like 5 a.m. this morning. OK, you just take my word for it. OK, half of the demo worked, OK? So, OK, that's a little weird. Skybox, OK, we've got that. Yep, that's fine. Yep, that's OK. Please work, or I'm just going to move on and then. Whee! If all else fails, just leave play mode and go back in, or close Unity and open up again. Yeah. So we have here the skybox actually rendering around rendering the video. Now, there's pros and cons to this. One thing is because it's in the skybox, you can't really have the video blending, like stuff coming through the video, or have a little video and stuff coming behind it because you put a mask on the video, or like, let's say your video has a car driving by, and you want a 3D character standing behind the car video that comes past. Because it's a skybox, it's kind of like the end. But also, it's slightly, I think it's slightly more performant, partly because you're not having to render another object. But it also depends on kind of your uses and what you want to do. I prefer the sphere method. Some people prefer the skybox method. It's really up to you. It's, again, I show you these things, and then you have to go off and play with them and choose how you use them. I then have one more demo. And this is timeline. So this is kind of a preview. I don't think this has ever been shown publicly. So, I mean, timeline obviously has, because we've been talking about it for a while. But this is basically timeline extended for the video player. So you can actually scrub through video footage along a sequence, which is pretty cool. So a typical scenario might be you have a character that walks around a scene, and then you enter sort of a trigger area, or you go up to a panel, or you push a key, or something like that, and then that triggers off a cutscene timeline. I gave like a talk about this yesterday, about like little sub-cutscenes or parallel cutscenes and things like that, or parallel sequences. So one thing you can do is you can actually put the video player rendering on something, and using this video player track, which is in development, and it's not going in 2017.1, but maybe a future thing, to add clips, almost like really basic video editing, and add clips to play at certain points. So what I have here is I have a weird robot. Oh, if I have no time, I'll try and render a video to his body. That would be pretty weird. I then have a sort of a box area that will trigger off some kind of timeline that will play. And then I have this panel, which will then have a hologram appear using a custom hologram shader, and then basically render a video all in a sequence. So if I select this object here, I then have my timeline. And because you can, in Timeline, you can script your own tracks and script your own sort of like behaviors, we have this video script playable track. And on this video script playable track, we have clips, just like you would have an iMovie or anything like that. One for a countdown video. So you can see here that for this specific clip, we have video player outputs to the video clip, whether it loops or not, the preload time, so warming it up. Is there a specific clip in time, whether it's muted or not? We then have a short section of the Atom demo, and we also have a Unite trailer at the very end. So you can see we have these clips on the video, and we can play them in a sequence. So ultimately, what's going to happen is the camera's going to zoom up to here. Okay. Oh, it did it the second time. Everyone ignore the first time. But me pointing that out probably made it worse. So you can see here that we have an animation of this like hologram panel sort of increase. And then you can see we have this countdown, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. And you'll notice that it's at 3 because I've trimmed it. So I could actually trim this video down. And you'll notice here it goes 8, 7, 6, 5, holds on the frame until it cuts to the next video in the sequence. You can do very basic kind of trimming and cutting of little clips. Now, because it's output to this hologram shader, which I downloaded from the asset store and tweaked very slightly, you could basically do all sorts of interesting things. So if I now play this and place it up, so you can have a look at it. Here's this shot of Adam. So you can notice here that this is a sci-fi hologram shader from the asset store. Thank you, Zolologo, for making this. And we have a custom UI, and we have this main texture of the actual thing that's going to be played. And look, this is hooking into a render texture from the video. So you can see that you can actually combine the video with shaders, with textures, with objects in the scene, with animations, with timeline. And we've really kind of tried to make it, I know I said this before, and it sounds kind of American cheesy, but like first-party citizen or first-feature citizen, whatever. We try to make it important. That's basically what I'm trying to say. And then we have this whole clip that then plays, increases, cuts to Adam, animating. It then cuts to this tiny little trailer. And then because Timeline allows you to hold on the last frame, at the end of the video, it holds onto the video and leaves the Unity logo there. So when you go back to your out that cutscene, it then holds it on that last frame. So you can see that you can actually integrate these things together. I know everyone's dying to see what it does, but I've kind of ruined it by scrubbing through it before. So you got weird robot dude with like the best jump ever. He walks into this sort of like this bounding box, and then if I hit R, it's going to kick off this timeline of the video. I can still like run around and play around with it. 8, 7, 6. Oh, and then we have this video playing on this screen whilst the game's going. So you could do Minority Report, where your character moves to an environment, and all these different videos are playing off of different sequences. What I should have done is gotten the actual Adam robot and then try to render the Adam demo on the actual Adam robot, and it would just, yeah. And you can see at the end of the timeline, it goes back, and then we have the Unity logo stuck on the screen and sort of holding there. And the other really cool thing is that you can trigger off the video, and then whilst the video is playing, just kind of like, just jump off the platform and just leave it there. So the cool thing is that you can have video playing not just as like a sub-sequence, but you can also have it integrated into your games or projects in lots of different ways. I have 1 minute 10 left, so I'm going to try and render a video onto the robots, if that's okay, or... Pardon? Stereoscopic 360. Maybe, yes. I don't know too much about stereoscopic stuff, admittedly. We have the Ask the Experts bit. Is that specifically for VR? OK, so I don't know anything about VR, admittedly. Everyone just gets up and leaves. So in the Ask the Experts bit, they'll have like VR people who will be able to talk about that, if that's OK. Sorry to like pass it off to them, but yeah. So I have 30 seconds. Let's try and, OK, so we have the video in. We go to a material. We go to the robot. Where's the robot? And there we go. OK, it's almost OK, we can kind of see a video playing on him. Yeah, so you can kind of see Adam on this robot. So you can see that, yeah, OK, it works with skin mesh renderers as well, which is kind of cool. Yeah, pretty weird. So it says my time's up. PowerPoint is, I have the links up to Kajiro stuff. OK, recover file. Let's use that one, please. I showed off that. Yep. Oh, OK, so this is basically the thing I want to show. So you have create video, you have the asset, you do the settings and transcoding, you have the playback output, and then it's rendered. I did the demo. So the video effects project is on Kajiro. If you search his name, it will come up with this whole GitHub repo and things. So you have the video player effects. So that's the one with the blue and white cubes and all sorts of things like that. He's got so much stuff in there. Like I just spend whole weekends just digging through all of his content because it's incredible. So hopefully, yeah, if you search Kajiro or Shader Magician, it'll probably pop up with him. So the actual chroma key project is called Proc Amp. That's probably the one. The other one's just called Video Player Effects, so it's quite easy to search. But this one's called Proc Amp. So if you search for that, you will get that. And that's basically the end. It says I'm out of time. And probably the next speaker's here and getting really angry. So probably what I'll do is I'll sort of hang around there and then slowly work way back to the demo booth there if you want to say hi, talk about video stuff, talk about not video stuff. I don't know anything about VR, unfortunately, but the Ask the Experts bit probably does. Or you just want to talk about Unity in general, I'll be here pretty much the whole time. I'm on Twitter, and I just post weird stuff. But I'm also on email as well, and also just post weird stuff there. So thanks for coming. For the locals, dankjewel.